Welcome to Psalm 5. There is one line in the psalm that you may know. It's among the first lines said when you enter synagogue traditionally in the morning. You know the opening line, Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov mishkenotecha Yisrael. How goodly are your tents, O Jacob, your dwelling places, O Israel. A line recited by the foreign prophet Bilam in regard to Israel. But the next line in that welcome to synagogue is from this morning's psalm, Va'ani berov chastecha, verse 8. But I, through the abundance, through your great kindness, avovetecha, I will come into your house. Eshtachave el helchal kedshecha, I will bow to your holy temple, biyiratecha, in awe of you. And so the psalm that we're about to enter has a familiarity with verse 6. And I would entitle this psalm, Morning and the Power of Words. For you will see also in verse 4, a repetition of morning. Here are some things to be mindful as I prepare to share the psalm with you. Here are the key words that are repeated. A lot of focus on speech, the power of speech, with God listening mentioned 4 times. Evildoers who use speech for harm 7 times. 4 times the righteous are described, and the closing verse uses 3 synonyms for joy, and that's a culmination. But this psalm, much like the first 4 psalms that we've studied together, often are at play between a person seeking God's presence and trusting in God, and doing so in attention with the evildoers, with those in this case in particular who misuse words with slippery tongues. When I read a psalm, I ask, this particular poem, how and when would I use it? Which brings me to a teaching of my teacher, Elliot Dorff, who looking at prayers will ask, in teaching prayers, what would you surmise was the prompt for the writer? What was the situation? And clearly, we can only speculate. We don't know. Traditionally, this is another Psalm of David on the run, speaking to those who pursue him, as those previous few Psalms. But that's not always the way to understand the Psalm. It can be a psalter, a writer, in this case, waking in the morning and turning to God in a dangerous world, dangerous because of the misuse of words against him and the power of words to draw closer to God. And so I begin. For the lead player upon the Nechilot, a Psalm of David. Give ear to my words, Adonai, acknowledge my murmurings. Pay attention to the voice of my cry, my sovereign and my Lord, for to you I pray, Adonai. In the morning you hear my voice. In the morning I arrange my prayer before you and await. For you are not a God desiring wickedness. No evil shall abide by you. The boasters shall not stand in your sight. You hate all evildoers. You destroy them that pronounce lies. Adonai loathes the bloodthirsty or deceitful. But I, through your great kindness, I enter into your house. I bow down toward your holy temple in awe of you. Adonai, lead me in your righteousness because of my foes. Make your way straight before me. For there is in their mouths nothing right. Their innards falsehood, their throat is an open grave, their tongue smooth talking. Hold them guilty, O God. Let them fall by their own counsels. Because of their plentiful crimes, cast them down, for they have rebelled against you. But let them rejoice who find refuge in you. Let them sing gladly forever. Protect them. Let them exult in you that love your name. Now let me go through the psalm more closely, unpacking its structure and the nuance of some of the words. And what, again, I ask you to give thought to is, who is the author speaking about? What is the prompt? What do you think is going on in his life? It can be a guess. Or how might you find this psalm meaningful? What would be the context? So I begin again, and now going back and forth with the Hebrew and the English. L'menatzeach el hanichilot, for the lead player upon the nichilot. Robert Alter, the Berkeley professor who has a book on Psalms, says that nichilot is an obscure term. We can't identify what kind of instrument. But already the Radak in the 12th century in France says that the word nichil is identified with a swarm of bees. So this instrument might have this drowning sound, the bzzz sound, conveying a certain tension, but also a sound that is the making of sound in the mouth, but without any real content, but of danger. Give ear to my words. That's how I translated ha'azina. Ozen is an ear, and it's one of the synonyms for listening, though some commentaries say that it's listening with really, like putting your hand behind your ear. It's really paying attention with your ears carefully. Bina hagigi, acknowledge my murmurings. Often higigi is translated as meditations. I've chosen to use what is more common as the understanding of hagigi in the Bible, which is murmurings, which again is pointing toward this psalm as a psalm about the use of the mouth. Pay attention. Here again, this psalm is the first of the psalms we have studied that in its entirety is only addressing God. In that sense, it's like a prayer. Other psalms, like the one we did yesterday, Psalm 4, was as if the Psalter was talking to enemies. Here, all verses are addressing God. Pay attention, Hikshiva, Lakoshavi, to the voice of my cry, my sovereign, my Lord, for to you I pray. Here too, a prompt is distress. We don't know what the distress is, but this author is turning to God in anxiety. Verse 4, Adonai, in the morning you hear my voice. In the morning I arrange my prayer before you and await. Now, some commentators, like Benjamin Siegel, whose book of Psalms commentary I like very much, he will say, don't be too concrete in reading a psalm. If it says in the morning, it can be, not just the morning. It can be any time. You can understand it metaphorically as fresh perspective. But I tend, back to Eliodor's insight, ask myself, what's the prompt? And for me, this psalm registers as waking up in the morning, getting ready to go to pray to God, marked by the temple. And as he awakes, he has a longing. And verse 4, with the repetition of Boker twice, helps give me context. Psalm 4, which we looked at yesterday, was a psalm of the night with the repetition of finding peace and sleep. Here, it's awaking with an anxiety of knowing there's danger. And now you can draw a line under verse 4 as there's a shift. as now the Psalter talks about who God is and how God hates those who misuse their tongues. Verse 5, for you are not a God, and here it's small because the word in Hebrew is el, and that's kind of a job description when it's el, source of power. You're not a God desiring wickedness. No evil shall abide by you. Lo yit yatzvu holalim. The boasters shall not stand in leneged einecha, shall not stand in your sight. The word here, holalim, is like hallel, right? Those who praise. But here, the implication is they're boasting about themselves. So that's the characterization of the nature of the foe. Those who are arrogant, who are boasting about themselves. Alter and my friend Martin Cohen, they translate this word holalim as debauched, those who are debauched. And the art scroll is roisterers. But you get the gist. Holalim, which normally we think of as a positive, right? Hallel, those who praise, here are praising themselves. So they're debauched. You destroy them that pronounce lies, dovrei chazav. Adonai loathes the bloodthirsty or deceitful. And here there's another dimension. They're not just with their words threatening, they are dangerous. Damim ish damim urmirma. They're literally going to have blood on their hands if they were able to fulfill their words. And now a shift again. You can draw a line under 7. It returns back to himself, having now described the evil speakers, va'ani. But as for me, but I, through your great kindness, I enter into your house. I bow down toward your holy temple in awe of you. Adonai, lead me in your righteousness because of my foes. Make your way straight before me. So he's saying, you know, that's them. Now, God, you know me. It's to you because of your great kindness, chasdecha, chesed, that I come into your house. It's your gift to me. I know that I'm not all good, but I trust in you. And then he goes back, and verse 10 is almost worth circling because it's so strong. Ki ein befihu nechona, for there is nothing right in their mouths. Karbanam havot kever patuach gronam. Their innards are falsehoods. A grave is the opening of their mouths. Lishonam yechalikun. For their tongues, they are made smooth. This is understood by some commentators as escalating. There's nothing right. Their innards, in terms of motivation, is false. Their throat is like an open grave, kever. It's such a place of darkness, what emerges. And their tongue, yechali kun, which is literally, as Alter said, smooth with their tongue, or a slippery slope. Once you follow along their words, it takes you into the pit. And now a shift as he asks, which is a reoccurring theme, for judgment. Hold them guilty, O God. Let them fall by their own counsels. And again, this word of counsels, which we saw in Psalm 1, that the evil gathered together. Because of their plentiful crimes, cast them down, for they have rebelled against you. And now, the concluding 2 verses. Verse 12, 3 words for celebration. But let them rejoice who find refuge in you. Let them sing gladly forever. Protect them. Let them exalt in you that love your name. And in the middle, this word vitasech, which is protect them, is like schach, which is like sukkah, shelter. May you be a shelter, a source of safety, which is now even more explicit in the last. Whereas it goes from the individual in the earlier part of the psalm to 12 and 13, speaking to God about the righteous in general. For you will bless the righteous, Adonai, as a protective shield. With favor, you will surround them. And the last word in Hebrew, te'atirenu, I translate as surround them. It's the same word as atara, which means a crown. Robert Alter translates, like a shield, you crown him with favor, which is that you need protection from violent, deceptive foes. And so to pull together Psalm 5, this psalm, Benjamin Siegel entitles On Words and Personality. For me, I entitle it A New Day of Words. Clearly, the focus of the psalm is that words can be used to pray to God, and God listens. But words can also be lies. Words can also be self-boasting. Words can also literally emerge from a place of darkness and lead one to the grave. And it is that danger that the Psalter is responding to, a world in which words have power for good and for evil, a world in which the Psalter awakes in the morning, turning to God for reassurance that those who would seek evil through the use of words will be blunted and punished by God, and those who use words for God's praise will find life as a source of joy. With that, as the unpacking of Psalm 5, I now invite you to share some thoughts. What I would invite you to do, though, is pick only because we're limited on time, just one key reaction or thought. And the question is, what resonates for you in hearing this psalm? It might be a verse. It might be how you would find who the enemy is that you would respond to with this. It might be what you think prompted the Psalter. So pick one idea. Let's harvest a few in the 10 minutes that we now have for this sharing piece. Again, to unmute yourself, just hit the key bar, the space bar, or the little red arrow. Go right ahead.
This is Heather.
Hi, good morning, Heather.
Good morning. Thank you. I awoke early this morning, and I think the first word that comes to mind is a resistance to that, to what the psalm is saying, and a resistance to, just a resistance and to continue the creativity that is ablaze in all of us, and just to stay positive and try to move forward through that. I did wake this morning, and awakening can be at any point during the day. That's what I feel. That's what I'm gathering from this.
So let me reframe, Heather, what you shared as if first I'm you and then react to it. what I heard you share is, I woke this morning with the tension of a new day, kind of feeling a resistance to a danger and seeking to be able to turn that anxiety into something positive. And that seems to also be conveyed so strongly in this psalm. He's awaking, he's anxious, and he specifically is anxious about the words that are used in his larger world, creating danger or perhaps describing danger. And amidst that, he's turning toward the promise of prayer as a way to find positivity, that he will yet go to the temple and turn to God, and that God will yet punish those who misuse words and honor the righteous, and that life, instead of being tense, will be joyful. And those are the closing two verses. It's almost as if it's his affirmation, transitioning from awakening with tension to being reassured that it will be okay. Any other reactions? We looking for what touched you?
Hi, this is Jennifer Berman. And like I said, I'm learning these for the first time, and I'm trying to imagine what these words with that, you know, the idea of a sound of a swarm of bees would probably be very agitating. And especially back then, because that's real danger. If you hear a lot of bees, you probably shouldn't be there. But how that sound would hold the tension in it. But then I wondered, as the psalm went on, if they would have changed the music or something. I don't know. I was trying to hear it musically.
That's a great opening, Jennifer, to focus in on this introductory verse, where, as I noted, the word nichilot, at least understood by Radak, is used elsewhere to be a swarm of bees. And perhaps, you know, in the beginning, there is that tension. And again, in verse 2, hagigi is murmurings, the kind of a buzz. You know, pay attention to my murmurings, because he's waking up. There is not yet a kind of a clarity. So yes, it conveys tension that might have shifted. You know, there is a play in Hebrew that a bee is a devora, which is also in Hebrew the same root as words or speech, ledaber, and can be used like in the book of Devarim, the book of words, the fifth book, Deuteronomy. The rabbis will say, in terms of Moses's speech to the people, that it was like a devora that was stinging and sweet, that a bee has the capacity to do both. And maybe it opens with that sound of the bees swarming, and at the end, it clearly turns toward a quality of joy, of sweetness. Another reaction. Ahuva, I'm gonna unmute you, Ahuva. One second. Go ahead. Is that Ahuva who raised her hand? Go ahead.
Batya.
Batya was going to
speak.
speak.
Oh, Batya first. Batya and then Ahuva. Go ahead, Batya.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
My thought is that, again, I see a theme of reassurance, and I see the anxiety. And when we wake up in the morning, we face the world and things are going to happen. Some things we can control and some things we cannot control. And when you are able to control certain things, you have a certain sense of security. And when you can't control it, that's when you feel more anxious and more insecure. And so by turning to God and leaning on God, you know, to help control some of those other things, it increases your own sense of security and reduces your anxiety.
So I'll repeat and then react. So Batya says that that in awakening with anxiety, the anxiety is often around a lack of control, of chaos, of words being used to be hurtful, and that there's a need, and God helps fulfill it, for a sense of control, that God will reward and punish, for instance. I would also add that by articulating the anxiety, one also gains some element of control. And that in reciting the psalm, you're able to articulate your anxiety, put it out, concretize it, and then you can almost breathe out a little better and have a sense of trust that God hears. That's a word that gets repeated. You, God, hear, and can find some assurance. And more, for the Psalter, God, you also punish. The sense that ultimately justice will win out. And again, the word God for us can have different meanings for different people, and how we relate to God may be a little bit more metaphorical, a little broader than it is for other people. But in either case, what is true that you shared, Batya, God represents a sense of the good, which is where which is linked to God, will win out and create order. Ahuva, last reaction, and then I'll pull it together.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Ahuva.
I was struck by the structure of the psalm and how it starts with a person, the individual, and it goes to the plural. And also the parts of the face. The face is repeated several times, and the parts of the face, the ear, the throat, the tongue, the what else there? Mouth. These are the media that the Psalter is using to praise God, but at the same time, it's like double entendre that these are what the media of the evildoers use the same media in order to be evil and to be holilim, to be just that anti-God sort of.
All right, thank you, Ahuva. Those are great comments in terms of a focus on the words used. So I'm going to repeat your insight, Ahuva, and then react and then pull it together. The repetition in this psalm is in part physical, relating specifically to the process of speech and listening. That's the key theme, the speaker and God. He's speaking to God the whole time, who listens. And so the word ha'azina has a physical dimension, God's ear, and the mouths, verse 10, the innards, the throat, emphasize the physicality of this process of speaking and listening. And as Ahuva also noted, there is a shift from the opening, give ear to my words, amarai, and then talking generally, verse 8 coming back to the I, then describing them, and then concluding with verses 12 and 13, describing the righteous in the plural. So that the poem has a quality of movement and action. What I'm struck by so far in these first opening 5 psalms, the Psalm 4, 5, 3, 4, and 5 being Psalms of David, is this tension between the good and the bad, the power of words, the power of justice, creating order where there are those who create upheaval. And it's a very different kind of an experience reading Psalms closely than how we often think of prayers as sweet beckonings to God. These psalms, when read closely, embody a quality of tension getting resolved primarily through speech, and underscoring speech can also be used for evil, but here, speech used for good by a listening God. Of all the Psalms, there is none more painful than the one we'll study tomorrow. That's chapter 6, very personal and deeply anguished, somebody in despair. I look tomorrow to study Psalm 6 with you, and then for the last 10 minutes to unpack a little this concept of Sheol and what is the nature of the consciousness after death. Thank you all. 31 each day. We keep growing in our communal of Psalms study. Have a good day, and thank you for studying together. Call 2.